Step into the world of real Bigfoot encounters in this thrilling episode of Bigfoot Encounters Radio. From chilling sightings in the deep forests to emotional face-to-face moments that defy explanation, these true stories reveal the mystery behind the legendary Sasquatch. Welcome to Sstories, where we dive into spine-tingling tales of creatures lurking beyond the trees. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the gripping eyewitness accounts, unexplained phenomena, and eerie wilderness experiences will leave you questioning what truly roams the forests of North America. There's something about the deep woods that pulls people in, an ancient silence that carries stories older than any of us. The forest keeps secrets, and sometimes, just sometimes, it lets one slip. That's why so many who wander far from the beaten path, who hike into the hush of towering pines and moss-draped boulders, come back with tales they can't quite explain. On this episode, we explore some of the most compelling first-hand encounters ever shared with Bigfoot Encounters Radio, stories told by ordinary people who stumbled into the extraordinary. The first encounter comes from a retired forest ranger named Cleve Harwood. Cleve spent over 30 years patrolling the vast, rugged wilderness of northern Washington. He was a practical man, the kind who measured reality by what he could see, touch, and document. But even he admits that one particular evening changed everything he thought he knew about the woods he had called home. It happened late in the fall, when daylight slipped early behind the mountains and the forest grew shadowed and still. Cleve had been checking firebreak lines when he noticed a series of deep impressions in the soft earth, footprints, but not like any human tracks he had ever seen. They were enormous, nearly twice the size of his boot, and spaced far apart, as if whatever made them had an immense stride. He crouched down, tracing the outline with his fingers, and felt the hair on his arms stand up. Then, from somewhere beyond the ridge, came a low, resonant sound, half roar, half moan, carrying through the trees with a vibration that pressed against his chest. Cleve froze. He had heard bears, mountain lions, elk, none of them made that kind of sound. Something about it was almost human, but deeper, older, primal. He stood slowly, scanning the tree line, and that's when he saw movement on the slope above him. A dark shape, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped between the trees. It walked upright, it moved with purpose, and for a moment, just a moment, Cleve thought it had turned and looked directly at him. He described the moment with a steady voice, but even through the microphone, listeners could hear the decades-old tension underlying every word. He never claimed it was Bigfoot. He only said he had never again dismissed the stories. Whatever he saw was real, and it was watching him just as much as he was watching it. The next story comes from a married couple, Jesse and Maribel, who spent their honeymoon backpacking along the Appalachian Trail. They weren't expecting anything other than scenic overlooks, early morning fog, and maybe the occasional black bear. Instead, on their fourth night, they woke to the sound of heavy footsteps circling their campsite. Not the scurrying of raccoons. Not the cautious crunch of a deer. Something big, something powerful. Maribel whispered that she could feel the ground tremble with every step. Jesse slowly unzipped the tent, just enough to peek through, but before he could make out a shape, a massive shadow fell across the thin nylon wall. They both held their breath. The creature exhaled, a long, deep breath that sounded almost curious. Then came the unmistakable scent of wet fur and earth, drifting through the cold night air. After several tense seconds, the footsteps moved away, and the couple listened as the sound faded into the darkness. At sunrise, they found massive tracks around their camp, each print showing clear toe impressions. But what unsettled them most were the marks on the trees. Something had scraped the bark 8 or 9 feet above the ground, as if marking territory. When they shared their experience on the show, neither wanted to label it a Bigfoot encounter outright, but they said they left the forest with the sense that whatever had visited them wasn't an animal acting on instinct. It was aware, observant, intelligent in a way that frightened them more than any predator ever could. Then there's the haunting account from a hunter named Travis, who had spent years tracking elk in the remote stretches of Montana. He knew every sound of the wilderness. He could distinguish the snap of a twig from yards away and identify the creature responsible. But one early winter morning, as a thin mist clung to the forest floor, he heard something that unsettled him to his core. He was following fresh elk tracks when he suddenly realized the forest had gone quiet. Not just quiet, silent. No birds, no squirrels, even the wind seemed to have stopped between the branches. That was when he heard the whistle. It echoed through the trees, not like a bird call, but like a person mimicking one. Then came a second whistle, this time from behind him. Travis felt the unmistakable sensation of being flanked. He slowly reached for his rifle, but before he could lift it, he saw a figure step out from behind a cluster of pines. It was tall, well over 7 feet, and covered in thick, dark hair. Its arms hung low, nearly to its knees, and its chest was broad and powerful. The creature didn't growl or roar. It simply stared at him with dark, intelligent eyes. Travis said that in that moment, he felt no aggression coming from it, only curiosity. As if the creature was trying to understand him just as intensely as he was trying to understand it. Then, with a fluid stride, it turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees in seconds. Travis stood rooted to the spot, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. He had always dismissed Bigfoot stories as campfire talk. But after that encounter, he says he can no longer deny the possibility that something truly extraordinary exists out there. But not all encounters are visual. Some are defined by eerie, unexplainable experiences that linger in the mind long after the moment has passed. One such story came from a woman named Delia, who had spent her childhood in a small cabin nestled deep in the Oregon woods. She shared a memory that had stayed with her for over 40 years. On quiet nights, she said she could hear something tapping on the side of their house, slow, rhythmic taps that started after midnight and stopped before dawn. Her father always dismissed it as branches or raccoons, but Delia remembered hearing heavy footsteps outside her window and seeing a massive silhouette move through the trees whenever the moonlight filtered through the curtains. She recalled hearing a strange, throaty humming sound drifting through the forest, unlike any animal she knew. One night, she finally gathered the courage to look out the window. What she saw was a towering figure standing near the tree line, angled as if watching the house. She ducked away immediately, too afraid to look again, but she never forgot the shape or the sense of being observed. Years later, after moving away, she returned to the property and found that the new owners had experienced similar events, tapping on the walls, muffled vocalizations, and fleeting glimpses of something large moving through the woods at night. Delia believes that whatever had watched her as a child had been watching the land itself, not the people. As if the forest had a guardian of sorts, one that tolerated human presence but never fully retreated. The most emotional encounter of all came from a trucker named Bo, who had an experience that changed not just his beliefs but his outlook on life. It happened late one winter night while he was driving a supply route through a remote stretch of British Columbia. His headlights caught something on the side of the road, a figure hunched over, as if injured. At first, he thought it was a bear, but as he slowed down, he realized the shape was too tall, too broad, too human-like. The creature lifted its head, and Bo found himself staring into a pair of enormous, expressive eyes. What shocked him wasn't fear, it was the sorrow he felt radiating from the creature. Its shoulder appeared injured, and each breath seemed labored. He didn't get out of the truck, but he cracked the window slightly and spoke softly, telling it he meant no harm. The creature watched him, its eyes reflecting pain and exhaustion. After several moments, it rose to its full height, towering above the ditch, and limped back into the forest. Bo sat there for a long time afterward, shaken, not because he had seen a monster, but because he felt he had witnessed something real, vulnerable, and alive, something that wasn't supposed to exist yet clearly did. Stories like these continue to pour into Bigfoot Encounters Radio, each one carrying its own weight, its own mystery, its own spark of something unexplainable. Some people describe fear, others describe awe, a rare few describe something bordering on a connection, however brief, between two beings who don't fully understand each other. Whether these encounters are glimpses of an undiscovered species, remnants of an ancient hominid, or something even stranger, one thing remains certain: the people who experience them are never the same afterward. They return from the woods with a new awareness of how thin the line is between the known world and the unknown. In the forests of North America, there are places where the trees grow so dense and the land stretches so wide that a creature could live its entire life unseen. Perhaps that's why these stories persist, why they continue to evolve, and why each new account, told in the shaky voice of someone who swears they saw something real, adds another piece to the puzzle. Bigfoot might be myth, it might be flesh and blood, it might be something in between. But until the forest gives up all its secrets, we are left with the voices of those who have come face to face with the impossible and walked away convinced that the world holds far more mysteries than we can ever imagine. And so, as we close this episode of Bigfoot Encounters Radio, one thing becomes clear: the woods are alive with stories, waiting for those willing to listen. And maybe, just maybe, the truth is out there, standing in the shadows, watching from behind the trees, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself.